Hello and welcome to News9 Live. As the war enters 19th day in West Asia, we shall bring you quick developments. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vows to destroy the Hamas. Meanwhile, 700 Palestinians have died in Israel's overnight raids. Israel has also dropped leaflets in Gaza asking for information on the hostages. Police in London also stopped a pro-Israeli rally that was held in the city. Clashes also took place between the Israeli police and Palestinian supporters in Jenin. On the economic front, S&P has downgraded Israel's credit outlook, while President Joe Biden and Saudi Crown Prince hold talks on the Israel Hmas war. Moving on, more than 700 Palestinians were killed overnight by Israeli airstrikes. Gaza's Hamas-run health ministry said that it was the highest 24-hour death toll in Israel's 2-week-old total siege. The Israeli military said it had hit over 400 Hamas targets and killed dozens of its fighters overnight, but that it would take time to destroy Gaza's ruling Islamist group. There appeared to be little prospect of a ceasefire anytime soon in the bloodiest episode in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict for decades. What can be described as a heart-wrenching account from Gaza? The lives of infant twins, Wateen and Ahmed, were forever altered by tragic Israeli strike. Their mother was tragically killed in an instant during the airstrike.
When these strikes began, they were about to turn 14 months, a year and 2 months. Wateen and Ahmed are breastfeeding babies. At midnight, my sister called us and said she would feed her twins and sleep before they start striking. At 2 a.m. we heard an explosion. We woke up and saw that her parents-in-law's house and her house were on fire. She was protecting the boy, Ahmed, so he wasn't injured. But her daughter, as you can see, is injured. What did they do to deserve this? Ahmed is at home and I'm sure he feels the absence of his sister. As we say, twins are always connected. He is always crying at home and she is in the hospital. After the airstrike, you know we are the closest people to Wateen, but she doesn't recognise us. Her father plays with her, but she doesn't recognise him. Aside from the pain she's experiencing, a while ago there was an airstrike and she started to scream.
The United Nations World Food Programme, WFP, on Tuesday, that is 24th of October, warned of a deteriorating crisis in Gaza with conditions amongst the worst the organization had ever witnessed. Brian Lander, the deputy head of emergencies at WFP, said people in the enclave were in desperate need of water, food, and all the primary needs for basic survival. Some people were living on just 1 liter of water a day. Others were reduced to boiling seawater, while organizations like the WFP were unable to reach 1.1 million in desperate need of food, he added. Let's listen in to Brian Lander, the deputy head of emergencies at WFP, what he has to say about the situation.
Without the ability for humanitarian organizations to reach people in need, the situation, as I said, is only going to deteriorate for them. We know that people are in desperate need of water, desperate need of food, desperate need of all those things that are primary for your survival, and yet the crisis continues without our ability to reach them. So the situation is as bad as we've seen anywhere in the world, and we know in the next days it's going to be very tragic for many. No, it is not sufficient at all. We do not have the access that we need, both to access Gaza itself, but then within Gaza to be able to move commodities, to be able to ensure that our safety of our staff on the ground. We do not have those assurances at all, and therefore we cannot access the people that need the desperate assistance that we can provide. It's only going to get worse. We know that food is running low in Gaza in the shops. From our contacts with the traders that we've been working with, we know that people are running out of food very quickly. We are trying to get food into Gaza. The only route at the moment is through the Rafah crossing with Egypt, but that's very limited, and we do not have the kind of access that we need to understand and to be able to provide people with the food that they need.
Disturbing footage released by the Palestinian Red Crescent Society shows the aftermath of Israeli attacks in southern Gaza. The PRCS headquarters, as seen in the video, is filled with people who have fled the violence. According to PRCS, a nearby airstrike injured individuals and caused significant damage near their headquarters and the Al-Amai hospitals in Khan Yunis, prompting around 4,000 displaced individuals to seek refuge. In this footage, people can be seen seeking shelter inside the corridors of the Palestinian Red Crescent Society's headquarters in southern Gaza. The video shows makeshift sleeping arrangements with beds on the floor and individuals gathered on staircases. The building's entrance exhibits the aftermath of the conflict with broken glass scattered on the floor, shattered windows and significant damage caused. This comes in the wake of Israeli attacks in the area, forcing thousands of people to seek refuge within the damaged headquarters. Moving on, hundreds of people gathered in Amman near the Israeli embassy at Al-Kalauti Mosque, waving Jordanian and Palestinian flags. They chanted slogans in solidarity with Palestinians amidst escalating violence. Let's listen in to the reactions coming in from Jordanians protesting near the Israeli embassy in Amman in support of Gaza.
شعور شديد بالقهر، قهر وقمع انه احنا لا نعامل بإنسانية أقل من أي إنسان تاني موجود بهذا الحياة. إحنا عم نطلع على هدول الناس من بعيد وهالقد بنزعل من قهر، فما ببالك هم اللي بيعيشوا هذا الحكي كل يوم، فربنا يصبرهم وربنا ينصرهم ويكون معهم.
The Israeli military dropped leaflets in Gaza urging Palestinians to provide information on hostages held by Hamas. The IDF also offered protection and rewards to the informants. The leaflets carried the information and phone numbers to call and also a QR code to pass information on a secured line. Hamas had kidnapped more than 200 Israelis during cross-border raids into Israel, which killed 1,400 people on the 7th of October. Despite the offer, residents tore up the leaflets and sloganeered against Israel. Israeli forces are awaiting orders for a ground invasion to rescue hostages. Hamas released few hostages, promising more when conditions would permit them to do so.
تم توجيه لنا بعدد مناشير من الطيران إلى المواطنين بالهروب من قطاع غزة للانسحاب إلى المناطق الجنوبية، فتم الناس في سحابهم إلى الجنوب، فتم اغتيال الناس وهم ذاهبين إلى المناطق الآمنة اللي أمنتهم بها إسرائيل، فتم لهم هذا من النوع الاحتيالي والنوع الكذب والوهم للمواطنين. واحنا ناس ولا لنا في تنظيمات ولا لنا في اول ولا في اخر. عباب الله احنا عمال بنشتغل. شحن عباب الدار هدموه. صغار 30 نفر قعدنا ننقل فيهم من ندفه لندفه، اطلع من الشيخ من الكرامه، طلعنا على الشيخ رضوان، لحقونا في الشيخ رضوان، اطلع على الواد، في الواد بعد الواد صاروا يضربوا ومش عارفين وين نروح. كل غزه مهدده للقصف.
The elderly Israeli hostage, who's 85 years old, released by Hamas, said she was beaten by militants as she was taken into Gaza on 7th of October, but was then well treated during her 2-week captivity in the Palestinian enclave.
My mom
Let's
is
listen
telling
in.
the horrific stories. She's saying that many people. My mom is telling the horrific stories. She's saying that many people, a swarm of people, came through the fence. The defense cost 2.5 billion shekels, and it didn't help even a little bit. My mom is saying that she was taken on the back of a motorbike with her body, with her legs on one side and her head on another side. That she was taken through the plowed fields with a man in front on one side and a man behind her. And that while she was being taken, she was hit by sticks by Shabab? Yeah, Shabab people. Until they reached the tunnels. There they walked for a few kilometers on the wet ground. There are a huge network of tunnels underneath. It looks like a spider web.
The Israel Defense Forces says it struck several Syrian military targets after rockets were fired from Syria towards Israeli communities in the Golan Heights. The IDF says fighter jets hit military infrastructure and mortar launching sites. Reports are also coming in of Israeli military strikes caused severe damage to the headquarters of the 5th Armored Division of the Syrian Army. The military did not, however, provide further details. It did not accuse Syria's army of firing the 2 rockets which set off air raid sirens in the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights on Tuesday. There was no immediate comment from Syria. Israel has traded fire with Lebanon's Hezbollah and militants in Syria in recent days. A wider conflict over its northern border at its battles Islamist Hamas militants in the Gaza Strip following a deadly attack in Israel. Those are the visuals that are coming on your screen right now. Israel has traded, of course, fire with Lebanon's Hezbollah and militants in Syria in recent days, a wider conflict over its northern border as it battles Islamist Hamas militants in the Gaza Strip following a deadly attack in Israel. However, there was no immediate comment from Syria on what really happened. Moving on, Sarina Blumfeld is one of the tens of thousands of elderly Holocaust survivors living in Israel. She is once again facing the reality of war. Take a look at this report.
During the day, I don't think as much, but during the night, the evening, but this is how I try to be strong. I try to be strong, try to forget sometimes, not to forget because my heart is aching for the soldiers, for those kidnapped, the little children, not even a year old, and they're already there. Horrible. I suffered because of it. Since the 7th month, since October the 7th, I've been sick because of it.
Unfortunately, for some of them, this has been a trigger. Definitely a trigger for PTSD, but not only. The stress of the war, the alarms, Some of them don't even want to go into a bomb shelter. They're so depressed, they don't care if they live or die. It's going to affect everybody in Israel. Everybody will eventually know somebody. It's only a matter of time.
Fears from world powers that the conflict between Israel and Islamist terrorists in Gaza will spill onto other countries may be turning into a reality. The United Nations says fighting between Israeli forces and Hezbollah on the Lebanese border is displacing massive numbers of people. Here's a report.
These are fires blazing on the border between Israel and Lebanon over the weekend, the result of fighting between Israeli forces and Hezbollah. As the war between Israel and Islamist militants in Gaza continues, fears are growing that the conflict will spill over into other countries. The United Nations reported on Monday that almost 20,000 people have now been forced from their homes in Lebanon, most of them to escape the border fighting. The UN's International Organization for Migration says they started tracking the displacement on October 8th, a day after the devastating Hamas attacks on Israeli communities. Hezbollah is supporting Hamas in the war. Reuters recently found this woman in a school converted into a temporary shelter near the border. She's saying she couldn't find another place to stay. Even UN peacekeepers wouldn't take them in. She was in the middle of cooking when she fled, and her neighbor's house was destroyed. Israeli communities on the border have also been evacuating, with dozens of towns and villages ordered by the government to clear out. Hezbollah hasn't fully committed its forces to the war, and it's not clear if or when it may do so. As of Monday, it's reported to have lost over 24 fighters since October 7th. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has warned that if Hezbollah did open up a second front to the conflict, that it would bring unimaginable devastation to Lebanon.
Clashes between Hezbollah and the Israeli military thus far have been mostly limited to several towns along the border. An Israeli helicopter attack struck an empty position near the border town of Hola after a missile fired from Lebanon hit an Israeli military position. The Israeli military said the anti-missile attack hit a position in Manara with no casualties. These are the skirmishes which have been reported near the border areas. Of course, there is tension which is brewing on the Israel-Lebanon border. And the border areas are particularly vulnerable, as has been reported. However, the clashes that have occurred between Hezbollah and the Israeli military have mostly been limited to several towns along the border, and therefore these visuals on your screen of the tensions, and these are border areas that you are right now seeing on your screen. And my colleague Manish Jha reports from the Lebanese border. Take a look.
TV9 की टीम इस वक्त इजराइल लेबनान बॉर्डर पर मेतुला में है। मेतुला वो जगह है जो लेबनान बॉर्डर पर इजराइल का आखिरी इलाका है। इस वक्त कैमरे पर हम उन तस्वीरों को आपको दिखा रहे हैं। देखिए, लेबनान बॉर्डर पर जो मेतुला के इलाके में किस तरह से जो इजरायली डिफेंस फोर्स ने टेक ओवर किया है और यहाँ से रहने वाले सभी लोगों को सुरक्षित जगहों पर भेज दिया गया है। लगातार रहकर दोनों तरफ से क्रॉस फायरिंग होती है। अक्सर टैंक से, आर्टिलरी से जो फायर किए जाते हैं उसकी आवाज़ से ये पूरा इलाका थर्रा उठता है। मेतुला में रहने वाले जो तमाम लोग हैं उन सबको यहाँ से कई किलोमीटर दूर सुरक्षित जगह पर रखने की नौबत इसलिए पड़ी थी क्योंकि इस पहाड़ी के उस पार से जो हिजबुल्लाह के पोस्ट हैं वहाँ से लगातार इन इलाकों में रॉकेट या मिसाइल दागे जाते थे। अक्सर इन यहाँ पर मौजूद जो आर्मी के पोस्ट हैं उन सबको टारगेट किया जाता था और फिर IDF भी जवाबी कार्रवाई करती है और इस पहाड़ी के दूसरी तरफ जो हिजबुल्लाह के पोस्ट हैं, चाहे वो मिलिट्री पोस्ट है या उनके टावर हैं या फिर उनके बेस, उन सबको टारगेट किया जाता है। और पहाड़ी पर आपको इस तरह के अलग अलग जो कम्युनिकेशन टावर हैं वो सब दिखाई देंगे लगभग हर पहाड़ी पर। यहाँ देखिए मेतुला में ही स्थित इस तरह की पहाड़ी पर जो आपको कम्युनिकेशन टावर है, क्योंकि यहीं टावर के पास या टावर के नीचे अलग अलग सुरक्षित जगह पर आईडीएफ के बेस मौजूद हैं, वहाँ पर आर्म पर्सनल्स मौजूद हैं। इस वक्त हम जो आपको सामने में जो रेजिडेंशियल इलाका देख रहे हैं, हम वहाँ तक गए थे। वहाँ पर इजराइल की जो आर्मी है उन्होंने बैरिकेड लगा रखा है और उसके आगे फिर किसी भी सिविलियन की एंट्री बंद है। वहाँ सिर्फ और सिर्फ आर्म पर्सनल्स को ही रहने की इजाज़त दी जा रही है। इस वक्त जो कैमरे पर आप ये पूरा इलाका देख रहे हैं, ये वो जगह है जहां पर इजराइल और लेबनान के होने वाले किसी भी संघर्ष को लेकर न केवल ये दोनों देश बल्कि पूरी दुनिया सशंकित है। यही वजह है कि इजराइल के राष्ट्रपति भी ये बात कहते हैं कि हम हिजबुल्लाह के साथ जंग नहीं चाहते हैं, लेकिन अगर हिजबुल्लाह ने जंग किया तो फिर वैसे में लेबनान तबाह हो जाएगा। तो ये हालात इस जगह का है, वो इसलिए क्योंकि यहाँ टक्कर बराबरी की है। आईडीएफ नहीं चाहता कि अभी आईडीएफ की ताकत और आईडीएफ का ध्यान वो कहीं से भी दक्षिणी इजराइल में हमास के खिलाफ हो रही कार्रवाई से बटकर हिजबुल्लाह की तरफ आ जाए। लेकिन चूंकि हिजबुल्लाह लगातार हमास की मदद करने को आमदा है और इसीलिए हिजबुल्लाह की तरफ से आईडीएफ के ठिकानों पर या फिर इजराइल के इलाकों पर रॉकेट दागे जाते हैं, टैंक से फायर किए जाते हैं और जिसके बाद फिर आईडीएफ की कार्रवाई होती है और ये सब कुछ इन इलाकों में बदस्तूर जारी है। राइट नाउ आई एम नियर इजराइल लेबनान बॉर्डर एंड आई मेट a beautiful lady and I am going to talk to her and then she will tell us what is her India connection. So ma'am, what's your good name?
My name is Galia Bendro.
Galia. So Galia, you were telling me about your India connection and then about your daughter, and she is with me right now on phone, as you can see. Hi, what's your good name?
Tal.
Tal. Okay, so we are going to talk to her. So first Galia, so what is your India connection? What you know about India?
My mother, my grandmother and grandfather from India, from Pune and Bombay, and I have friends from India.
So have you been to India?
No, I'm not. I want to, and my daughter also want to go and visit India.
Moving on, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said on Tuesday that the war on the Gaza Strip may take a longer period of time. Today, the world is united behind Israel, said Netanyahu at a press conference with French President Emmanuel Macron in Jerusalem. The Israeli premier also warned Lebanese group Hezbollah against joining the war against Israel, saying it will regret if the group decides to do so. Listen in to know what all he said.
Hamas is responsible for civilian casualties, but we will do every effort to avoid them and to fight this war as speedily and as rapidly as we can, but it could be a long war. When this is over, the people of Israel will rebuild their communities and the people of Gaza will no longer live under Hamas tyranny. But first, there's one condition for anything that could happen and the good things that could happen once this war is over. And that condition is that Hamas must be destroyed. The test for the West and for civilization is Hamas. If Hamas emerges victorious, we will all lose. Europe will be endangered.
During the UN Security Council meeting on the Middle East on Tuesday, Israeli and Palestinian foreign ministers calling for justice for each of the states from the international community. Listen in to know what minister from both states are saying.
We are here today to stop the killing, to stop the massacres being committed against the Palestinian people. The ongoing massacres being deliberately and systematically and savagely perpetrated by Israel, the occupying power, against the Palestinian civilian population under its illegal occupation must be stopped. The Security Council has a duty to stop them. The international community is obliged under international law to stop them. It is our collective human duty to stop them. Now, continued failure at this council is inexcusable.
Hamas are the new Nazis. Just as the civilized world united defeat the Nazis, just as the civilized world united to defeat ISIS. The civilized world has to stand united behind Israel to defeat Hamas. The birth of the State of Israel, 75 years ago, I hear the call for proportionality. I hear the calls, as said Lynn before, for a ceasefire. Tell me, what is a proportionate response for killing of babies, for rape women and burn them, for beheading of a child? How you can agree to a ceasefire with someone who swore to kill and destroy your own existence? How?
After severe criticism by world leaders on the Israel-Hamas war, Israel's Ambassador Gilad Erdan demanded the resignation of UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. The ambassador said that the war did not happen in a vacuum. Listen in to know more about what the ambassador said.
The UN is failing, and you, Mr. Secretary General, have lost all morality and impartiality. Because when you say those terrible words that these heinous attacks did not happen in a vacuum, you are tolerating terrorism. And by tolerating terrorism, you are justifying terrorism. And the SG is blaming the victim. You are blaming Israel. This is a pure blood libel. This is a pure blood libel. And I think that the Secretary General must resign. Because from now on, every day that he is here in this building, unless he apologizes immediately, today we called him to apologize, there's no justification to the existence of this building.
The UN ambassador for Iran, Amir Saeed Iravani, said that the Secretary of the US had attempted to wrongly blame Iran for the Israel-Hamas conflict. He also added that the US had further intensified the conflict by overtly aligning itself with Israel at the expense of the Palestinians.
Today, the US Secretary of State once again attempted to wrongly place the blame on Iran. Iran categorically rejects these groundless allegations. Our commitment to the regional peace and stability remains unwavering. Iran aligned with the international community in endorsing the call for an immediate ceasefire and the cessation of Israeli relentless military aggression, as well as imperative to halt the forced displacement of over 1 million people from Gaza. The United States' unwavering support for the occupation and aggression has rendered it an active part of the problem. The US has further exacerbated the conflict by overtly aligning itself with the aggressor at the expense of the innocent Palestinian population. The rapid provision of military and logistical support to the oppressive occupying regime thus made the US complicit in the brutal massacre of innocent Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip. Mr. President, it is regrettable that today at this chamber the United States, Canada and certain Western states attempt to shift the blame from the wrongdoer to the victim. They equate the self-defense and right of self-determination of Palestinian people with terrorism, attempting to grant the occupying regime Israel an unjust right to self-defense.
French President Emmanuel Macron proposed on 24th of October that an international coalition fighting against Islamic State in Iraq and Syria be widened to include the fight against the Palestinian militant group Hamas in Gaza. Macron gave no details on how the US-led coalition of dozens of countries, of which Israel is not a member, could be involved. Speaking alongside Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu in Jerusalem, Macron stressed that France and Israel shared terrorism as their common enemy.
Cette cause est juste, point final. The fight must be merciless, but not without rules, because we are democracies which fight against terrorists, democracies which therefore respect the laws of war and ensure humanitarian access, democracies which do not target civilians or Gaza or anywhere. Respect for the population requires, in this case, to allow access to aid, to restore, and we have spoken about this at length, in great detail, to restore electricity for hospitals, for the sick and the injured, without allowing this electricity to be used to wage war.
Moving on, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak addressed the hospital attack in Gaza on Monday in the British Parliament. Prime Minister Sunak said that the missiles fired at the hospital did not come from Israel, but they likely came from within Gaza itself. Sunak also added that the misreporting of the incident created a negative ripple effect in the region, damaging American diplomatic efforts and escalating tensions in the United Kingdom.
We have taken care to look at all the evidence currently available. Mr. Speaker, I can now share our assessment with the House. On the basis of the deep knowledge and analysis of our intelligence and weapons experts, the British government judges that the explosion was likely caused by a missile, or part of one, that was launched from within Gaza towards Israel. The misreporting of this incident had a negative effect in the region, including on a vital US diplomatic effort and on tensions here at home. We need to learn the lessons and ensure that in future there is no rush to judgment.
In the latest developments concerning the conflict in the Middle East, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov on Monday said that unilateral moves to resolve the conflict in the Middle East can only worsen the situation, and the United States has not offered any new ideas on tackling the brewing crisis. He slammed the US for stopping the work of the Middle East Quartet, and there is no alternative entity that parties find acceptable now. Listen in to know what all did he say concerning the conflict.
Соединенные Штаты уже находятся в ряду лидеров, тех, кто уже вмешивается.
The United States is already at the forefront of those intervening. This includes sending 2 aircraft carrier groups and several thousand combat soldiers, as I understand it, with all the necessary weapons, including heavy weapons, to the conflict zone. And the more such proactive steps there are on the part of any state, the higher the risk, the higher the danger that the conflict will escalate. We are convinced that the first and absolutely integral step should be a ceasefire, resolving humanitarian issues and facilitating the departure of foreign citizens from the Gaza Strip. And then, of course, we will need a mechanism that should consider the situation in a broader context. The entire international community, and this still remains a fact, has confirmed and continues to confirm its commitment to the principle of 2 states, the so-called 2-state solution to the problem, when 2 states, Israel and Palestine, 2 full-fledged sovereign states, will live side by side in good neighborliness, peace and security. The United States simply stopped the work of this quartet, and now there is no other authority that would be acceptable to everyone. So if Anthony Blinken has any bright ideas in this regard, we do not know about them. I am convinced that alone, as the United States tried to do for many years, no one will reconcile the Palestinians and Israelis.
Cryptocurrency's role in terrorist financing and funding terrorist groups has come under renewed scrutiny following a deadly attack in Israel by Palestinian terrorist group Hamas. Here's a report. Take a look.
There has been a lot of focus on how crypto is used to fund terrorist organizations and militant groups. So since the Palestinian militant group Hamas launched an attack on Israel at the start of October, the role of crypto in funding militant groups and terror organizations has really come into the spotlight. Hamas itself has been known to raise money via cryptocurrencies. Over the past few weeks, the Israelis have frozen several cryptocurrency wallets it said were linked to Hamas. Many people say that crypto is an extremely useful tool for these kind of organizations. It's largely anonymous. The money that anyone sends over the blockchain, that's the technology that underpins cryptocurrency, is usually just identified by a string of letters and numbers. It's difficult to track, and this means that for militant groups or terrorists seeking to raise money, crypto has become a very popular tool. Now, it's not completely anonymous. Cryptocurrency companies, that means exchanges, as well as law enforcement organizations, can actually work out who is sending the money, but it takes a bit of work for them to do that. The United Nations officials said in 2022 that about 5% of terror attacks were considered to be financed by cryptocurrencies. A variety of cryptocurrencies are known to be used by terrorist groups and militant groups to raise funds. That said, while Bitcoin is popular, stablecoins, that's a type of cryptocurrency that's designed to keep a very steady value, have become more popular in recent years. There are also a number of other sources that these groups use to raise funds. That's anything from charities, shell companies, investments overseas to also raise funds. So crypto is definitely part of the mix, but it's very difficult to say exactly what proportion.
In some other news, Iceland's Prime Minister and women across the island nation went on a strike. They are pushing for an end to unequal pay and gender-based violence. Icelanders awoke to all-male news teams announcing shutdowns across the nation. Schools closed down, public transportation was delayed, hospitals and fewer workers and hotel rooms went uncleaned. Katrin is Iceland's Prime Minister. She said that she would stay home as part of the women's strike and expected other women on her cabinet to do the same in Iceland. Iceland's trade unions are the main organizers of the strike. They called on women and non-binary, a term to describe those who do not identify as either male or female, to strike. They refuse to do both paid and unpaid work, including household work, for the day. About 90% of Icelandic workers belong to a union. China's defense minister has been sacked. Wonders actually never cease. In China, the country has now sacked Shang Fu as defense minister. This is China's second leadership shake-up in 3 months. State news agency reported that Li had been removed without any kind of an explanation. It came after weeks of speculation over the fate of the US sanctioned general, who has not been seen in public since the end of August. The decision to remove him was approved by the National People's Congress Standing Committee. Li is the second minister to be abruptly removed since Xi Jinping began his unprecedented third term as the party's leader last October. Qin Gang was replaced as foreign minister in July by his predecessor Wang Yi after a similar unexplained withdrawal from public engagement. The reasons for Qin's removal is still not known. The US sanctioned general's fall follows weeks of speculation that he would meet the same fate as former foreign minister Qin Gang. Xinhua does not give any explanation for Li's removal, however, nor has it announced a replacement as yet. The announcement came just days before a Pentagon delegation is due to arrive in Beijing for a regional security forum, paving the way for long-stalled high-level military dialogue between the two sides. Unlike their counterparts in the West, Chinese foreign and defense ministers are chiefly policy enforcers, not the top decision makers, but both Li and Qin are state councillors, a senior position in the State Council. That's China's cabinet. 65-year-old Li is also the public face of the People's Liberation Army and a member of the Central Military Commission, the PLA's ruling body within the CMC. Li ranks only behind its chairman, Jinping, and vice chairperson, Zhang Huya and Weidong. It is not clear if Li's downfall heralds a further shake-up in the military, which is undergoing its most dramatic modernization in Chinese history. President Xi has set a target for the PLO to become a world-leading fighting force by 2049, which means reaching parity with the US. Back home, Delhi's residents can breathe a sigh of huge relief as the city's air quality registers a significant improvement, landing in the moderate category according to data from Suffer India, which is a system of air quality and weather forecasting and research. After months of dealing with poor air quality and hazardous conditions, the shift to moderate air quality is a welcome change for the national capital. My colleague has this ground report. Take a look.
दिल्ली में हल्की हल्की ठंड दस्तक दे चुकी है और यही वजह है कि जो प्रदूषण है उसमें भी काफी ज्यादा बदलाव देखने को मिल रहा है। लेकिन अगले 10 से 15 दिन काफी ज्यादा महत्वपूर्ण है क्योंकि दीपावली आने वाली है। पराली जो पड़ोसी राज्य हैं दिल्ली के वो भी जलाएंगे और ऐसे में दिल्ली का जो प्रदूषण है वो काफी ज्यादा बढ़ सकता है। लेकिन कल के मुकाबले अगर आज की बात की जाए तो दिल्ली में प्रदूषण में थोड़ी सी कमी देखने को जरूर मिल रही है। आज जो दिल्ली का औसत प्रदूषण है जो AQI है वो 190 है। आपको दिखाना चाहेंगे कि ये जो दिल्ली का ओवरऑल एयर क्वालिटी इंडेक्स है वो 190 है, यानी कि अभी ठीक श्रेणी में है, लेकिन 200 तक पहुंचते ही ये पुअर यानी खराब श्रेणी में पहुंच जाता है। दिल्ली का एयर क्वालिटी इंडेक्स काफी ज्यादा बदलाव हो रहा है। जैसे जैसे ठंड की वजह से हवा की गति कम हो रही है तो दिल्ली में प्रदूषण का खतरा भी लगातार बढ़ता जा रहा है और ऐसे में लोगों को खासी दिक्कतों का सामना करना पड़ सकता है। उम्मीद की जा रही थी कि दशहरे के बाद कुछ पटाखे जल सकते हैं, ऐसे में दिल्ली की जो आबो हवा है वो थोड़ी और जहरीली होगी। लेकिन आज के अगर AQI की बात करें तो दिल्ली में ये नॉर्मल जरूर है, 190 है। इसके अलावा पूसा रोड के अगर AQI की बात की जाए तो वो भी 128 है, यानी कि वो भी मॉडरेट है, नॉर्मल है। 200 के बाद ये जो श्रेणी होती है वो काफी खतरनाक होती है। लेकिन ऐसा नहीं है कि दिल्ली के सारे इलाके नॉर्मल हैं। अगर मथुरा रोड की बात की जाए तो यहाँ की जो स्थिति है वो 152 यहाँ पर इसका AQI है, वो भी अभी फिलहाल मॉडरेट स्थिति में है। लेकिन IIT का जो इलाका है वो 173 है, लगभग पुअर कैटेगरी की तरफ बढ़ रहा है। लेकिन मथुरा ये अगर एयरपोर्ट की बात की जाए तो यहाँ की स्थिति काफ़ी ज़्यादा खराब है। AQI जो है वो 218 तक पहुँच चुका है, यानी कि इसकी जो आबो हवा है वो ख़राब की श्रेणी में आती है। और टर्मिनल 3 की अगर बात की जाए तो वो भी वहाँ भी हवा की जो क्वालिटी है वो बेहद ख़राब श्रेणी में पहुँच चुकी है। और यहाँ का जो AQI यानी एयर क्वालिटी इंडेक्स है वो 211 तक पहुंच चुका है। इसके अलावा लोधी रोड की अगर बात की जाए तो यहाँ पर हवा में काफ़ी ज़्यादा सुधार है, AQI 149 तक पहुंच चुका है। यानी कि कल के मुकाबले अगर बात की जाए तो एयर क्वालिटी इंडेक्स जो दिल्ली का है वो कुछ बेहतर ज़रूर है। लेकिन कुछ इलाके दिल्ली के हैं जहां अभी भी प्रदूषण बना हुआ है, चाहे वो दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी का इलाका हो, टर्मिनल 3 का इलाका हो, इन जगहों पर प्रदूषण देखने को ज़रूर मिल रहा है। अगले 10 से 15 दिन इसलिए इम्पोर्टेंट होंगे क्योंकि जो पड़ोसी राज्य हैं वो पराली जला सकते हैं और पराली का धुआं दिल्ली में आकर के हर साल जिस तरीके से कह सकते हैं कि तबाही मचाता है, यहाँ की हवा को जहरीली बनाता है, लोगों को सांस लेने में दिक्कत देता है, तो ऐसा भी हो सकता है। हालांकि पिछले हफ्ते केंद्र सरकार के साथ तमाम जो आस पड़ोस के राज्य थे उनके पर्यावरण मंत्रियों की भी मीटिंग हुई थी जिसमें उन्होंने कहा था कि इस बार कोई भी राज्य पराली नहीं जलाएगा। और साफ तौर पर दिल्ली के पर्यावरण मंत्री गोपाल राय ने कहा था कि दिल्ली में इस बार भी पटाखे पूरी तरीके से बैन रहेंगे। तो अगले 10 से 15 दिन काफी ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट है दिल्ली के लिए। उम्मीद की जा रही है कि दिल्ली की आबो हवा को साफ करने के लिए जो सरकार कदम उठा रही है वो कारगर साबित होंगे। लेकिन जिस तरीके से ठंड बढ़ रही है, हवा की गति मंद हो रही है, दिल्ली की हवा भी धीरे धीरे बदलाव आ रहा है और दिल्ली में भी प्रदूषण थोड़ा बहुत देखने को जरूर मिल रहा है हवा में।
According to some new research, billions of people could struggle to survive in periods of deadly and humid heat within this century as temperatures rise. The situation is particularly worrisome in the world's largest cities like Delhi and Shanghai. The study has found that the world is on track for 2.8 degrees Celsius of warming by the year 2100. Listen into what happens when warming increases degree by degree.
And we found that at about 2 degrees Celsius warming, we see a large increase to about 750 million people exposed to 1 week of uncompensable environmental temperatures every summer at that point. Once you get to about 3 degrees Celsius, that's where we start to see the emergence of a month of these temperatures for a significant part of the population, about 500 million people every year. And at 4 degrees Celsius warming, we see that about 3 billion people experience 1 week of these environmental thresholds that are deemed uncompensable every year.
Climate change, as we know, is affecting the entire world, creating havoc and disrupting lives. One of the most prominent effects of this can be seen in Amazon River Basin, which is witnessing the worst drought in over a century. Amazon River, which is the world's largest, has hit record low water levels due to intense droughts. The drought has also exposed ancient carvings on the rocky outcropping along the river. As per researchers, these carvings are more than 2,000 years old and consist of human faces sculpted onto stone. And that's all we have in this bulletin, but keep watching News 9 Live for all the latest developments and several stories. Thank you.
China won't let us rest easy on our borders, but they will keep flooding our markets. What does Xi Jinping really want?
I think he wants the Indian market, no doubt about it.